Being powerful, it's a bit like being ladylike. So if you have to say you are, you probably ain't. So I think I like America most of all on the days when people are not going around shouting, USA, USA, we're number one, we're the greatest. I prefer the days when they don't do that, when they're probably most to be admired.
What is it that makes us boast about our greatness and belittle others? What is it that keeps us from ascending beyond the immediate? I cannot help but wonder what Hitchens would say today. It is a thought that somewhat haunts me as I stumble through communicating a similar belief of many before me, that we are brothers and sisters of the human race, with core values shared among us, which are hidden in the labels and divisions we create.
And if you understand freedom, it's based on tolerance and nonviolence. So if it's tolerance, it should be bringing all kinds of people together, and that's following our Constitution. We shouldn't be fighting among ourselves, because we shouldn't be fighting in Washington. If we all take the same oath of office, where does the fight come from? Somebody is messing up somewhere.
Libertarians proclaim reducing government interference because all Americans should be free to live their lives and pursue their interests as they see fit, as long as they do no harm to another. That peaceful, honest people should decide for themselves how to live their lives without fear of criminal penalties, and that the government's responsibility, if any, should be protecting its citizens from force and fraud.
The ruling class has always taught and trained you to believe it to be your patriotic duty to go to war and to have yourself slaughtered at their command.
The socialist soapbox calls for a classless society with communal ownership and perspective that is driven to enhance freedom, justice, and solidarity towards a goal of peace. Peace, of course, includes police abolishment, which I must say is highly unlikely to ever be a reality, but it is the only ethical goal.
Right? Forget about effectiveness or not effectiveness. You don't get to confiscate my money just because you and your friends vote to take it.
The deliberate pragmatism of conservative thought espouses the value of moral order and building off the best of the past with long-term goals that are achieved mainly through community and family with an ideally restrained and fiscally prudent government.
People are born to be free, and that their basic instinct is the desire to free themselves from coercion, authority, and oppression.
The ideal liberal is said to believe in that natural goodness of human beings and the intrinsic value of individual liberty, that to have an honorable society, we must have moral equality across sex, race, birth origin, religion, gender, class, wealth, etc., which is achieved through nonviolent modifications of institutions.
With certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
America, America, America. Cannot help but believe we have steered ourselves quite off course. We are now reading the introduction to the reader of Crimes and Punishments. The point of this chapter is an attempt to clarify the perspective and approach to philosophy. A personal struggle of my communication plays a significant role in the authoring of this introduction. It is essential that people feel a sense of justice, and we often internalize that feeling to one of revenge or individual justice. From the development of our approach to systems and institutions, we cannot merely focus on those most harmed. We must treat victimization with a recognition of the ripple effect of trauma on a societal fabric. For instance, if a mother is attacked, that violence will impact her children, spouse, community, and more as the ripples expand and contribute to new ripples and crash against others. Justice cannot be revenge, for revenge is another traumatic ripple, ultimately increasing the likelihood of additional victimization. I was given some strong personal lessons from the formerly convicted and others who had been exposed to the system from the perspective of the recipient, in contrast to my experience as the conductor. We must begin to care more about the consequences of our actions on other people. In my case, I was around a lot of trauma, and I issued out trauma to the point that suffering was familiar. Our comfort and familiarity is an excellent mechanism for coping with the challenges of our environment, but it is also a significant barrier to objective observation. It is so familiar for us to see the oppressed struggle that we just accept it as an aspect of life. Emotionally, the state-sanctioned murder of 12-year-old Tamir Rice snapped me out of the blind acceptance of a familiar violence. It took Tamir being a martyr for me. But there are living heroes teaching an understanding of the effects of the trauma that we can learn from now. The most dedicated educator, and very likely the most dedicated human I have come across, is the sister of police brutality victim Tyrone West. Tawanda Jones and her aunt Diane Butler have been presenting accounts of trauma resulting from state violence for close to 250 consecutive Wednesdays in Baltimore. What does it take to passionately fight for justice for such a long time? Trauma. This dedication is a result of trauma. Trauma that we pay for and implicitly approved with our inaction. The choice to not decide is a choice. Right after we go over a little more about what crimes and punishments in the 21st century essays are, we will get to the introduction to the reader. Like most cops, the emotions felt when pinning the badge on my uniform for the first time was a source of immense pride, but also a shocking reality to the complication of performing a duty under the weight of such power and responsibility. The callousness of veterans cops and the braggadocious masculinity of the streets are immature expressions of the generations of trauma enacted on our brothers and sisters from a system oppressing us all. My internal fights with policing, whistleblowing, scholarly endeavors, reform efforts, and politics have failed in exhausting fashion.
And what I'm trying to say is that we are looking at people who are doing nothing new, and if we focus on the actions, then we can fix the things for next time, because when you focus on people, we end up thinking we can chop the head off, they put a new person in and something will change. But if we don't focus on the methodologies and the institutions, then we will be totally missing
somebody, put them in a prison cell, do the paperwork, go back out and do it again. So what we really need is to change the incentives and disincentives so that no matter what the role, we're still going towards that objective that actually serves you.
More occupation, more vehicles, if your answer continues to be violent, because we have to understand that everything about policing is inherently violent. I have come in there with authority and told you what you will do.
I believe one of the reasons behind my struggles is that I had not laid out a consistent and intertwined philosophy of what in the hell I was trying to say. For the philosophical foundations of crime and punishment to be ushered into the 21st century, a reimagination of our institutions is necessary. Building off the famous works of Cesar Beccaria, I construct those pathways to the Enlightenment period of justice. Free will, sanctuary cities, gun control, eyewitness testimony, incarceration, and more must all work together for a prosperous society. Learning these lessons has been a brutal journey for me, and it is unlikely to be an easy one for you, but it is one that we owe to the future, to make a safer world for our children to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Crimes and Punishments in the 21st Century by yours truly, Michael Wood, is most conveniently ordered from the evil empire Amazon, because we are in that 21st century after all. For the enhanced and expanded audiobook, check out Audible. In the meantime, the philosophical half of Crime and Punishments, all 40-some chapters and then some, is being presented as a free podcast from iMember Media at imembermedia.com and will be available on all major platforms and direct from the publisher. Pause the video or see the links in the notes and prepare for the challenge and adventure of self-critical thought. Introduction to the reader. The evolution of laws and their processes has led us to a further understanding of what drives humanity and its organization. The particulars of any system are influenced by its circumstances, but the principles of what work will work everywhere. Human remains the key word in human organization, and that is what society is. Human organization and governments are the administration of that society's rules. The legislation of laws has come from a variety of forms, and more are still to come. Some version of democracy, republic, monarchy, communism, or dictatorship has taken up much of the known governmental structures. There is no intent for this to be a detailed argument over government procedure. Instead, this writing is an inquiry of truth derived from the lifelong pursuit of why. Alas, a cruel aspect of the quest for truth is that eventually you know enough to know how little you know. All you will ever know for sure is that which does not work. It has long been held, and remains true in many societies, that the principles behind the law for regulating human societal code were sourced by revelation, natural law, or the societal bonds of our communities. Much confused discussion and debate have attempted to shepherd the conflicts of the three to minimal public consensus. There is nothing rare about the inability to see the readily apparent. The three principles are an irrational proposition because of their flawed premises. Social bonds are the societal constructs human beings establish to work in cooperative partnership and to make sense of their world. Revelation is informative from above, and there are no divine statutes or known mechanisms for their sourcing. Natural law is a rational nature of humans or vague good and evil concept. There is no sensible nature of people, good and evil, or immutable principles. Everything is subjective, and we know this when the edict to not kill is an accepted violation in self-defense and public safety circumstances. Revelation and natural law are social constructs within the social bonds. There are only the social bonds we create, and there is objective reality. Those social bonds are also the source of political and moral principles. Individual and traditional tenets are inevitably held, but to codify the group laws, they matter not. For the group, policies must come from the critical inquiry, best practices, exploration, collective knowledge, and critiques. With principles of such origin, legislation can improve the social bonds of community. We are human beings who are incentivized to behaviors by the social constructs of our systems and institutions. Justice is exemplary of one of the social constructs that plagues the definition attempts from scholars in the streets. The prevailing sense of justice has come to be revenge plus equality. The burn for vengeance is laced in tradition and is rational from the individual. For the group principles of the social bond and the need to continually improve its sustainability, justice can only be the investigation into causation and pursuits to eliminate the conditions of development. Justice is reflected in successfully preventing the recurrence, not of the offender, but the offense. All in all, the general argument in public safety has been about the need for penal laws for societal existence. The concept is foundationally premised on the deterrence aspect of punishment. The problem is, punishment does not have an adequate deterrent effect. As science has advanced, the premise is revealed to be critically flawed. There is no need for penal laws. There is no need for punishment. There is a demand to codify justice into the social bonds. Which would seem to raise the obvious question. Why listen to me about these concerns? We are the sum of our experiences. These experiences have provided a rare opportunity for me. To have been a practitioner of violence to maintain social order and then be educated into being a scholar, researcher, and intellectual provides a particular perspective. Being in spaces from poverty to excess and from the streets of historical and legendary oppression in Baltimore to the stuffy conversations of academics provides some level of humility. I take listening very seriously and have learned from both the discarded and the praised. Those laws and enforcement measures I conducted are reactionary and cannot prevent the victimization I was supposed to be fighting. There is no panacea, no total fix, and there is no mechanism in place for adding the necessary ingredient of humanity. The tyranny of ruling over the actions of others, unless absolutely necessary, is all around us when we look. The glue that holds civilization together in cooperation is our societal bond. And there is no more significant reason why our version of ape has climbed to the top of the food chain. Even when that glue is weak, it remains our greatest strength for maintaining a productive community. We can continually improve our societies by focusing on that bond between members of a collective effort. Generally, these members have been viewed as citizens or something similar, but that social construct will prove unstable in the evolution of humanity. As science and experience inform our knowledge, the societal bond is codified into laws. Often this purpose of codifying the relationship is to provide a system which will benefit the most people of a community. But the next step of improvement is a system which is the most beneficial for all. While my experience and perspective deal with so-called criminal law, these principles apply to legislation in general. Tune in to the next episode as we explore the introduction to the author, which is the warning by doctor, lawyer, colleague, journalist, and friend, Roberto Alejandro of Stay Up News, to the strangeness of which I communicate and think.